Good afternoon and welcome to the Suicide Squeeze Fan Club Lounge. We are here today as part of the conclusion of the final fantasy baseball regular season and the playoffs. We had a very tight tournament leading to the number one seed from Grip, Steven's team, who was 16-7 in the season, and the third seed, he faced off against my brother Colton Ruzovich, Dammit Bobby, who had a 14-9 season, and they ended up with a 6-5 tightly contested matchup that did not conclude until the final game of the season, which was a doubleheader. And it was decided upon .005 on-base percentage, which went to Steven. That is how close the matchup went down to. And Steven, I would say congratulations for your first fantasy championship title in baseball. The firm Grip, he's had the name for quite a while, and he told me personally it's not going to change until he gets that title and hosts that trophy. So stay tuned for next season's draft when we will unveil the trophy to Steven. And I'd like to say congratulations to him. He had the best player in the league, which was Ohtani, who is the MVP. He had 54 home runs, 59 stolen bases. I don't think we're ever going to see those kind of stolen bases, pretty much based on his availability with pitching. He did not use his arm. He used his legs this season. And the Cy Young goes to Terrence Skubal, who was drafted by Colton. He led his team in all pitching categories. He had 18 wins, 2.39 ERA, and a 0.92 whip. He led the charge. We also go to the best pickup of the year, which was Imaga. He had 15 wins as a rookie, 2.91 ERA, and a 1.02 whip. It's actually kind of funny because it was he was drafted originally in the 24th round by Jack, who dropped him 2 days later. And I think that was a move that could have maybe been the start of his spiral for the season, starting 0-8. But I digress. Colton picked him up before the season started, maybe on the first 2 days. And at that time, I think it changed his trajectory and gave him a great chance at winning it this year. So I'll go into the best deal. I spoke about Jack earlier. He had the, I think, only trade this season, which was with him and Damian, for Jack receiving Jarren Duran, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Ryan Mahomes for exchange of Freddie Freeman and Adolis Garcia. Now, it was a huge pickup to get Duran because he ended up becoming one of the top outfielders, and it was an all-star this season. Vlad Jr. and Mahomes were all all-stars, and respectively, Damian got 2 all-stars in return, but 3 for 2. I think that definitely helped Jack's season to get him to the closing part of the end of the season with something to play for. And I'd also like to mention the Home Run Derby was always a fun thing to create a demand for. We had a lot of everyone submit their pits for who was going to hit the longest home run ball and who was going to win it all. No one correctly actually had the winning slugger, which was Teoscar Hernandez, which was owned by my father, Jay. He did not go with him and decided to go with Pete Alonso. But I did select 472 feet, which was 1 foot off of Ozuna's home run ball, which was the longest home run hit this season during the Home Run Derby. So we'll go through the ending standings as so. Firm Grip was number 1, obviously. I told you guys that. Steven led the league with 248 stolen bases. I think that was again with Ohtani and Corbin Carroll. They were big players for him. And Dammit Bobby, Colton's led the league in runs for 1,050 and RBIs at 1,039. Now, I'm just going to talk about these two because they are the top two teams this year. They both deserve to be in the finals. They both deserve to win. They had tremendous seasons. And I would like to say that it wasn't a surprise that these two teams were in the finals. And I can tell you one reason why. I've had good relationships with both of them, and I've given them a book to read before this season started. They both read Moneyball, and I believe that gave them an edge this season. They did their best to prepare for the draft. They did their best to evaluate players, but also to understand what is going on behind the scenes in Major League Baseball now, and how teams are run, and how players are evaluated. These two took it seriously, did the research, and also read the book Moneyball. So if you're interested about winning this fantasy baseball, league, I would suggest you look into Moneyball, because that is, how the game is played today, whether you like it or not. That's how all these GMs are finagling their team and adjusting the lineups and the pitching staffs, and they're a bit of a, it's a bit of an advantage if you understand how the game is played today, corresponding with all the players. I'll lead into third place. Austin won the last matchup of the week against me again for the second time this season. I'll give him credit. He edged me just slightly. But he also had the most strikeouts in the league. 1,745 strikeouts against. The most in the league. I had the fourth seed, ended up with fourth place, but I had 164 saves, which were the most in the league. And the Nets opponent had 103, which was a plus 61 in saves. So I think that is a very important category that I dominated. And speaking of moves, I had 74 moves, which was tops in the league, out of 78 possible moves. For a weekly acquisition limit of 3, I took advantage as much as I could and only had 3 or 4 unaccounted for acquisitions that I could have picked up. Kyle is the 5th seed. He had the most strikeouts and the most wins. I think that's because he has all starters. Damian had the lowest whip amongst the league at 1.08. I think that's also not a surprise because he picks up all relievers. Michael, who was a newcomer in the league, he had the most home runs for all the teams combined, 304. So great job on that, Michael. He picked the guys who hit the most home runs, and he had a pretty great season to start out as a newcomer. My father Jay had pretty good numbers. Mainly was in between all the teams in the standings and in the numbers. He was middle of the pack, but had the worst ERA and the worst whip with 4.16 ERA and 1.27 whip. I will say there's 5 pitching categories, and those 5 can also help you win a matchup, so maybe he needs to look into pitching that season. So do the Diamondbacks. And then we have Jack at number 9. He had 103 saves, we mentioned that earlier, which was a bit of a change for him as he was also on the pace of picking only starters, has changed his ways, and earned the second most saves in the league at 103. And we have Andy, who actually had 0 pickups over the season, but he had the best ERA at 3.28. So that is everyone's accomplishments this season. It was a fun year, and it was very competitive, which is always fun to be a part of. Again, I'd like to congratulate Steven for winning his first title, Colton for finishing just slightly under. I bet he has enough for next season to get that title one more time. And I'd like to say that there was a lot of great players and a lot of great performances this year. Those were mentioned, and I think it's going to be a fun year next year to see how the chips stack up. So thank you for playing. Good night. And stay tuned for fantasy basketball that will be upcoming in a few weeks. The season starts October 22nd.